I mean, he doesn't accept mediocrity. He wants to be great. I love that about AJ Brown. I love that about all great competitors. That's a trait, John, that I'm sure you know as you've covered many great freaking players. And welcome in everybody to a Thursday edition of Birds 365 here on JAKIB Sports. I'm your host, Zander Krause. That's my co-host, John McMullen. Another day in Eagle Land and another great show planned for everybody with plenty to talk about here. A lot being about AJ Brown. Some of those comments yesterday. We'll have some updates on the injury report. And we are now very close to that Week 11 matchup versus the Lions, potentially one of the best of the year this year. Johnny Mac, how you doing this Thursday morning, my friend?
Doing well. Trying to recover from the big day at NovaCare Complex where the locker room didn't open until about 6 o'clock. So, a little bit late if you hung in there for AJ comments and Jalen Hurts comments even later. But all started out with some combative Nick Sirianni. Interesting day at the NovaCare Complex. For a 7-2 team, the number one seed in the NFC, facing, this is a game I think we've all been looking forward and wanting to see for about 18 months or whatever. There's a little Lions talk. Jalen Hurts tried to turn it that way, but there's so much going on with in-house angst, I guess is the best term for it.
Yep, a lot of angst, and you pointed out the Nick Sirianni stuff. We'll get into the injury report too. Maybe some concern there. I think 80% of our offensive line, John, was on the injury report. I don't know how serious it is. We'll get some of your takes on that and the update there. John, where do you want to start? I think we got to start with the AJ because I know yesterday's show we talked about him going on Janky Rondo and we talked about his comments he made there, and he clarified his comments yesterday in an interview in the locker room, about 8-minute long interview. A lot of great quotes from AJ. I will share some of them with you here today. In my opinion, one of AJ's best media performances of the year. And I understand AJ where he's coming from here completely. I understand many people are committed to not understanding him or being upset with the way he's carrying it out. I do not happen to fall in that.
I like that description, by the way. Committed to not understanding. I like it.
John, what did you make before? I'll read some of the quotes in a little bit and we'll kind of go down that road. I'm sure you'll have some that stuck out to you, but just your takeaway, your thought process after listening to AJ Brown in the locker room yesterday.
Yeah, I think he did a good job. I'm with you. I think he explained it well. This is some of the stuff we've been hearing behind the scenes, and now he did it in front, and everybody can see it, which I like. And he did it, in a more traditional environment instead of nothing against Janky Rondo but some of those things aren't maybe taken as seriously. And AJ himself kind of, said he was joking about it and trying to, that's his way of trying to deal with it and try to get through it. But I thought it was positive from his standpoint to kind of understand what his take is. And it's not about numbers. Everybody's so conditioned. I talk about it, there's a lot of indoctrination in the world. And you're indoctrinated to beliefs, even when you don't know it, and much more serious subjects outside of football. But even in things as simple as football or sports, everybody's conditioned who's a sports fan for paying attention to numbers, and they're important. So if somebody's upset, it must be about numbers. Conditioned to say, you're the player, shut up and play, that kind of thing. There's a lot of indoctrination to your point of being committed to not understanding. It might even be subconscious more than anything else. But objectively, we've been talking, I don't know how long we've been talking about this. The passing offense isn't very good, objectively, compared to the good passing offenses in this league. Now, there's far worse. The Jets with Justin Fields, the Vikings with J.J. McCarthy, the Titans with Cam. There's far worse. But compared to what people think the Eagles are, It has never been that level that I've talked about for a couple of months now. It has never been that level. And there's a lot of things that contribute to that, and everybody wants it to boil it down to one particular thing that will solve it, whether it's the coordinator, whether it's the quarterback, whether it's the offensive line, whether it's AJ talking too much. But the reality is, it's much more difficult. It's much more layered, and it's a conflation of all those things. And you have what you have, which is a very good football team that doesn't pass the ball very consistently. And they're trying, their goals aren't to make the playoffs. Their goals aren't to win the NFC East. Their goals aren't to go 9-8 and reach 500 like some of these bad teams we're talking about in their passing game. They have different goals. I always talk about the life cycles of teams and organizations. This is a legitimate Super Bowl contender. They're trying to win the whole thing. So to win the whole thing, you got to be able to do a bunch of different things. And, almost winning it last year with an ineffective passing game, or at least an inconsistent passing game at times, has further masked the problem. Like, to me, if I'm a fan of this team and they said, well, we won the game, let's just do it again. Let's not try to improve. And by no means am I trying to say that's what's going on, because it's not. They're trying to fix it. But I would be incensed by that, because eventually it's going to bite you in the ass. And even though it didn't bite you in the ass last year, that doesn't mean that's going to be in perpetuity.
Right.
And that's sort of what AJ's been trying to say for a long time. And he said it very clearly. You have some of the quotes. I put one up where he says that very clearly. I'll try to find it as well. But so, I thought it was a good explanation of what he believes the issues are. And I don't think he's wrong. I don't think he's wrong.
No, not at all, Johnny Mac. John, we're gonna get into some of the specifics here on this, but I do want to ask you, after I listened to AJ Brown yesterday, they have the conversation, and sometimes I think it's a dumb conversation in terms of, it's low level, it's surface level conversation. But some people say it's Jalen Hurts. Some people say it's Kevin Patullo. Well, when I listened to AJ Brown yesterday, my initial takeaway was he has a bigger problem with the offensive philosophy, much more than he does specifically with Kevin Patullo or with Jalen Hurts. I mean, somebody kind of teed it up for him if he did have a problem with Jalen Hurts, like, hey, you're open a lot. At least that's what the film shows. And sometimes it looks like you just don't get the ball. And that would have been a slam dunk if he wanted to create a controversy about the quarterback. He completely shot that down. Said, we don't know what, Jalen's going through progressions. He's got a bunch of things to go through. He's got pressure in his face. You can't take a screenshot and look at it. Something.
Yeah. By the way, I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Can you say that again for the people out there?
Yeah, right.
Stop putting screenshots up. They're meaningless. You got no idea. You're taking every ounce of context out of it. You have no idea what the progression was. And why I say that is, if you're putting up a screenshot, you'd have some common sense to know I probably shouldn't put this up because I have no idea what the play is designed to do.
Yeah. It's never been a good way to look at football.
Yeah, please stop putting up screenshots of open receiver. And that's for any team. That's absurd. But anyway, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I mean, so the way I took that was more like, is he have a problem with the philosophy of the offense, which did change in week 4, as we've talked about extensively. Now, I will read a couple quotes to you, John, before I get your take on this. He said, and I'm going to quote here. I'm going to give the quote on what you were talking about, where he basically said you can't just turn it on. He says, it's not that I don't care about winning. All I care about is stats. No. It's been week after week. Sometimes we're not contributing. We're not doing our job on offense. You can't just keep slapping a Band-Aid over that if you expect to win later in the year. You think you're just going to it at the end of the year? It's not going to fucking happen. And that's a quote. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Last year, what it was, thank you for the ring, but it's a new season. They adapted. We have to adapt, and we have to continue to get better and find new ways. That's where the frustration comes in, because it's not about winning, you guys. I want to win, yes. I want to help contribute as well, do our thing on offense as well. I think that's fair. And then there's one other quote I wanted to read here before I get your take on the Nick Sirianni perspective of it, or the Nick Sirianni philosophy element of it. I think it's fair for me to even say that we do need to do a better job of creating for me, trying to help put me in situations to help contribute. But right now, it just feels as if I'm freeing it up for everybody. So there's a couple quotes from A.J. Brown. There was plenty other ones that were good and worth your time if you haven't seen the interview. John, do you think I'm reaching by saying it seems to be more a problem with the philosophy on offense than it is the play calling or the quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's simplifying it.
I agree. And I said that. I have a question with that.
Because in the past, he's, tiered in different directions. So, but, and it's because it's more than one thing, but certainly that's part of it. He's actually been very complimentary of Kevin for most of the season. And that's pretty much continued. Didn't really talk about him specifically. I don't think there were so many people there, but Jalen, obviously they're not as close as what they once were, but I don't think that's affected their working relationship at all. I do think, probably the most selfish thing he said was what you just said at the end there about it feels like I'm opening up things for everybody else. That's the lot of a number one receiver, and a lot of times, I mean, the whole goal is, you'll see the same thing with Chase and Jefferson and everybody else. And I mean, they're constantly doubled and sometimes tripled, and they're opening up things for everybody else, but you have to take advantage of that, which the Eagles don't do nearly as often.
Wouldn't the numbers on the offense this year, especially in the running game, dictate that he's correct there? Even if it's somewhat selfish. I mean, the offense can't run the ball right now. They have 7 of 9 games, John.
Well,
yeah, yards. I mean, they're not doing anything well this year.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's but also to the original point of, and by the way, I thought it was a great quote, but I thought one of the fumbles that people would latch onto is adapt. I don't even know if fumble's the right word, but people are going to latch on to that. He had these same problems last year. And rightfully so, I believe.
Yeah, but didn't Nick? I mean, this philosophy existed last year post week 4. And so that's kind of why I went to the philosophy here, because there was an era, and I know it's a while ago now, but there was an era when the Eagles offense wasn't this risk-averse offense, even with Saquon Barkley. Now, I know they had a lot of turnovers in 23 and early 24, and that's largely what dictated their shift. And now they've been so successful, you could easily make an argument to say, hey, I understand why Nick is sticking to this. But, boy, they are skating on thin ice, John. I mean, this margin for error is so damn small, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's post game 4, so week 5 bye. So from that point forward, this is how they played. So that's kind of how I look at it. And the difference is last year the running game's successful. This year it's not. That to me is the main difference. And to me, from seeing what's going on down there every day, it's their belief is, well, it's not working like it worked last year because we have to get the running game going. And as long as we get the running game going, everything else will fall into place. That seems to be their philosophy. Whether they can get it going, whether that even works, if they do get it going, nobody knows. But the idea that I mean, it's understandable. I don't like it. I've been very honest about that. I didn't even like it last year when they made their run to the Super Bowl. I think it was too conservative. I think it was unfair to the quarterback. I've said all this pretty consistently. I haven't wavered off that. But I think it's been a problem for a long time, not just this season, not just because of a bad game in Green Bay. I think it was, and to Jalen's credit, he's answering the difference between the Giants and Minnesota versus Green Bay. And he said, even when it's perfect, and he's talking about his perfect ranking, it's not perfect. We left a lot of stuff on the field in Minnesota. So, I think there's even from the quarterback himself, I think he knows it, but he's accepted, he's accepted, I don't want to say his lot in life, but that's how they play. So you can go about it in one of two ways. You can try to get it changed, as AJ seems to be doing, or you can accept it and try to accentuate and maximize it as much as possible. But at the end of the day, the guys with the power and the guy with the ultimate power is Nick Sirianni, and this is the way he wants to play. So, and he's, I will admit he's earned the benefit of the doubt to be able to do that. But, I have no problem with people pushing back and saying, yeah, you know what? This is probably too conservative, too risk averse. Let's try to find a better balance. But, and Nick kind of gave that little Easter egg. He doesn't say much, but, when he was talking about the turnover battle, he really hammered that down about how successful they've been. And that's the whole freaking philosophy, man. They believe if they don't turn the football over, they're going to win the game. And it's hard to argue with that.
Yeah, I just don't think that's a perfect way to go about it. I mean, there's plenty of times where you have turnovers and, you can still win a game. I mean, there's
not a good formula though. Not a good formula. Yeah, people do it all the time, but you don't do it consistently.
I mean, we won the Super Bowl last year. We had an interception in the game. We won the game.
Well, you're winning.
I'm not saying you want to get turnovers.
Well, they turned over again.
Avoid a turnover at all costs. While it can have benefits, can also be detrimental to what your offense is doing and increase the pressure on your defense.
Well, they haven't. I mean, they turned it over last week. I mean, to point to certain, but compared to other teams who turn it over 3 times a week.
Yeah, I mean, that's the extreme, though.
Well, 57-7 is the extreme. That's an extreme, but they did it. They accomplished it. That's Jalen Hurts touchdowns versus turnovers. That's the extreme.
So you think that? So I guess the question there would be: you think that, and maybe it's true. Maybe Nick is right. You think that is more important than having an offense that's more prolific?
Well, to the ultimate goal, yes. And the ultimate goal is to, let's be honest, the ultimate goal is to win the Super Bowl here.
So you think the offense being ranked where it is, not that matters or that's the whole point, but you think the offense being ranked where it is, as long as they limit.
Well, I bring up that question, and I again apologize publicly to BLG because I worded it difficult, but I got to ask, I thought it was a good exercise by Jeff Kerr, so I'll give him credit. He asked me that question: would the coaching staff rather have, use Herbert or Jalen Hurts? And I said, well, if you got him in a room and forced him to tell the truth somehow, they'd want Herbert. And then he asked me afterwards, would they win more or lose more? And I said, they'd probably lose more. But for their own mental health and for their jobs and scheming and all that kind of stuff, it would make it better for them. It would make it easier for them.
So even if there's frustration on the offense from the fan base, from A.J. Brown, from maybe Devontae Smith, maybe even from Jalen Hurts, you think they're right? You think it's worth letting everybody be frustrated because overall this philosophy is better than
people are frustrated. People are frustrated. Watch the language, the body language of players on bad teams. There's frustration all over the NFL.
No, absolutely.
This is part of the job, and this is why the job of the head coach is such a big job. And I think it's ludicrous that people boil it down to play calling, and he's a bad coach because he's not a play caller and this and that, yada yada yada. This is the hard part of being a head coach. To keep as many, you can never, even when you win the Super Bowl, it might seem that way, but there's 70 guys in that locker room at any given time, 53 and 17 more with the practice squad, and even more with the guys on injured reserve. But you get the point. There's a lot of people, and they don't all agree, and some of them are frustrated at all times, even with the best teams. Now you see it far more with the bad teams. And I got to watch Red Zone over the weekend because the Eagles are playing on Monday night. So I saw a lot of those bad teams. You know, Miami, Minnesota. But, you know, I feel like I'm picking on McCarthy, but I'm picking on McCarthy. So to use Jefferson example, because that's the best. Check out his body language last week. He knows what he's playing with. And he's fucking frustrated. And, you know, their two offensive tackles, they had 8 false starts at home because the kid can't even get the cadence right. And the veteran tackles are jumping off sides at home. And at one point, I saw Christian Darrisaw just say fuck and slam, you know, basically the most awful body language you could possibly have. That's an extreme in a bad team level.
Right.
But on a good team, like the Eagles, there's always somebody upset about something. Always. And your job as a coach is to get as many as those players on board to the collective vision as humanly possible. To Jalen Hurts' comment about it's never perfect. You can label it perfect. It's never perfect. And Nick does a good job of that. And I will give him credit for that. Is his approach the correct one? Well, it was last year. Well, it will be this year. That'll be to be determined. Would I go in a different way? Yes. You know, from his standpoint, though, I do understand the route he's going in because it's worked for him.
Right.
So you know, it's a difficult decision. And by the way, they're still the number 1 seed in the NFC.
Yeah, I know, and that's what complicates this conversation.
And they weren't even the number 1 seed last year. When they won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, but you know, to me, my problem with that conversation is I look at the makeup of a team. Like you look at the Vikings last year, they won 14 games, they got bounced in the playoffs. You look at the Lions, they got bounced in the playoffs. You look at the Eagles, and while they weren't the 1 seed, they had a great run game, a great defense, and a great offensive line. Like those are the things that will help you go the distance. You go to the playoffs this year, they can't run the ball. The offensive line has been good,
but they're not
great.
looking at it like that, Zander. You're looking at it like they can't run the ball because they haven't run the ball as effectively in the first 9 games.
8 and
like
9.
Their whole thing is we haven't run the ball for a bunch of different reasons, but we still have the best offensive line. We still have the best running back. That's their mentality.
But isn't that kind of what Brown was saying yesterday? Like you can't just turn that on.
Yeah, well, I mean,
you gotta.
It's the same thing with the passing game, though. So what is more likely for a team that's how I'll frame it? What is more likely for this team to get the running game going, or for this team to completely shift in midseason and get the passing game going? And not in a game, you know, one game like they have their upticks, but in a more consistent week-to-week approach? What is more likely for this
I mean,
team?
the obvious answer is the run game.
So my point is, if you want to go in that direction, and they probably will go in that direction in the off season, that's an off season thing.
Is there a world where they can take the chains off the extreme risk averse approach, and maybe, because like my takeaway yesterday, and I want to read the quote real quick before I talk about it. Let me just read the quote on AJ Brown responding to the Jalen Hurts question. So he was asked, there's instances where you're open and it looks like Jalen just doesn't throw the football to you. And AJ paused, and then he said this: certain plays have different reads. Despite what it looks like when someone takes a screenshot, you can't go off that. He has certain reads. He has a lot going on in his head that he's trying to process, and then he has pressure in his face. So that was his quote on Jalen Hurts not throwing him the football. My takeaway, though, was, is Kevin Patullo, everybody says Kevin Patullo sucks, and he calls the same routes, and the receivers are on the same routes. Are those same routes just being called within this risk-averse offense that they're running, and there's no ability for Kevin to be creative, or in some ways for Jalen as a quarterback, to be better? Because a lot of people are looking. I'll be the first person to say it. Sometimes I watch games and I'm like, what is it? Is Jalen not as good as I thought? Does he stink? And then I hear AJ Brown and I'm like,
It doesn't stink.
no, I don't. I mean, that was an extreme, but I'm saying, is he the reason that the passing game sucks so much? Because it does. Let's be real. It's bottom 5 of the league, bottom 10 in the league for 2 straight years now. I look at this and I'm like, he is saying that this approach that they have is the reason for the offensive problems, not Kevin and not Jalen.
Well, I think the approach is a big part of it. But I think, there are times, and again, I think too much with anybody, not just AJ, but Jalen and Nick, and it's more obvious with Jalen and Nick because they're more obviously trying to deflect at times. I used to tell Jody all the time, nobody's under oath in these conversations. So there's sort of, and it could be one question, he's being completely honest. Another question, he decides to deflect. It's not even in the same press conference. And this is everybody, not just AJ. It might be, oh, I want to talk about this. I don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, I get it. Probably one of the worst parts of their job, that they have to talk to the media.
But it is part of their job. And it's an important part of their job, and it's collectively bargained that they have to talk to the media for a reason, because the NFL is the NFL, because of the coverage it gets and because of what it's become. And, if you don't have people showing up, paying attention to your game, it doesn't become the behemoth. And one of the few things the NFL understands is, we need coverage to generate this massive business that they built this into. So one of the few things that is understood correctly, I believe, by the NFL. But to my point about, the screenshot thing, I liked because I can't stand screenshot scouting. I can't stand it for the exact reason that AJ said. But, I've talked to AJ a lot over the years. How can I frame this? I'm not pulling it out of my ass by saying the ball doesn't come out on time at times. Again, not in other words, when the opportunity is there, too often the ball is not coming out on time. So again, it's not because of Jalen Hurts. It's not because of Kevin Patullo. It's because of Jalen Hurts, Kevin Patullo, Nick Sirianni's present sentiment and thought process on this particular offense, and risk aversion and conservatism. It's everything. It's not one thing.
Yeah, I think that's I agree.
But and I said, if you want to blame the coaching staff, and so many people do, my advice would be the avenue you should take is that the overemphasis on being conservative and being risk averse has affected Jalen Hurts's trust to just let it rip.
Right. It's also probably confined Kevin Petula, no?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, he's working under the same restrictions. But it's no different than Kellen, and it's no different than Brian and Shane before him. A little bit different with Shane. It's really, post Barkley centric that it's gotten really, but they're always, run first, but it's gotten just extremely risk averse since they figured out that Barkley could do what Barkley could do.
Yeah. And Barkley hasn't done that this year. And I think that's part of AJ's point. He thinks that we're going to get got. And I hope we don't get got. But a good look. It was great listening to AJ yesterday. But just last comment on this, John, and then we'll turn the page. I want to talk about some of the injury report. We'll get some of your comments on what Nick had to say yesterday. And Jalen Hurts also spoke. But I think A.J. Brown is so misunderstood, dude. He is far more mature than people give him credit for. I don't think he's this selfish guy that people think, oh, it's only about targets on a given day or how many catches he's getting. I really don't get that feel from him. And it bothers me sometimes when I see that all over the place because I really don't think that's who A.J. Now, I don't know A.J. personally. I've never spoken to the guy. All right, I don't. But just from going off of all the times I've heard him in the media and the way he plays the game and, obviously what he thinks of what he's capable of, I think people got it all wrong on A.J. Brown, John.
Well, I've been saying it for years. I don't think he's a diva. I don't think people understand what's going on here. And by the way, if they could flip a switch, here's what I think about A.J. Brown. If they could flip a switch and turn into the offense that is high powered and still have success, and they're throwing the football, and he's being first team all pro because he's already been second team all pro 3 times, by the way. And he's near the top of the NFL in receiving yards and all that stuff. He's still not happy. He is a guy who was so obsessed with getting, and you saw it after the Super Bowl. He said it, he verbalized it.
Which is common though amongst the greatest performers in any realm.
Yes. He's always striving for the next thing. He's not satiated by, again, he thought he'd feel away when he won the Super Bowl because he said, oh, wait do you get there? And he was like, he got there and he's like, okay, what's next? And everybody's partying and he's like, I don't drink. I don't, it's like, and he's back working out, whatever, a week and a half later. If it turned into what he envisions in his mind, I still don't think he's happy. Because even if they win another Super Bowl, I know he wouldn't be happy if they lost. But even if they won again in that way, in his mind, he'd be like, all right, we got to do it again. And in some ways, it's sad that you can't recognize, the greatness as it is. But if he wasn't like that, he probably wouldn't be as great as he is.
Yeah. It's called greatness. I mean, he doesn't accept mediocrity. He wants to be great. I love that about A.J. Brown. I love that about all great competitors. That's a trait, John, that I'm sure as you've covered many great freaking players. I mean, people who pursue greatness like that, a lot of times that's their mentality.